Đoàn kết, hợp tác, đối thoại nhằm tạo ra sức mạnh, đem lại lợi ích, củng cố niềm tin. Cách tiếp cận xuyên suốt là toàn dân, toàn diện, toàn cầu, đặt con người ở vị trí trung tâm. Với phương châm đoàn kết để có sức mạnh, hợp tác để có lợi ích, đối thoại để có lòng tin, tôi xin đề xuất G20 thúc đẩy 3 cái đảm bảo chiến lược sau đây. Một là đảm bảo ổn định để phát triển trong quan hệ quốc tế, chính trị, thế giới và kinh tế vĩ mô toàn cầu. G20 cần đi đầu xây dựng cơ chế tăng cường đoàn kết, hợp tác quốc tế, tôn trọng lẫn nhau, tìm giải pháp phù hợp giải quyết các xung đột, tạo môi trường thuận lợi cho phát triển, phối hợp chính sách để ngăn ngừa rủi ro hệ thống, ứng phó khủng hoảng, hạn chế rào cản thương mại, giảm thiểu phân mảnh, thuế cung ứng, thúc đẩy các sáng kiến, chuyển đổi nợ, đảm bảo ổn định vĩ mô toàn cầu. Hai là đảm bảo hệ thống thương mại đa phương dựa trên luật lệ với trung tâm là WTO, hệ thống tài chính toàn cầu cân bằng, minh bạch, cởi mở, quyền tiếp cận bình đẳng về khoa học, công nghệ và tài chính cho phát triển. Tôi đề nghị G20 tăng cường hợp tác, đấu tranh không chính trị hóa khoa học và thương mại, hỗ trợ các nước đang phát triển bằng cách chính sách thương mại công bằng, hài hòa lợi ích, phát triển hệ thống tài chính hiệu quả và nâng cao năng lực chuyển đổi số, đáp ứng tốt hơn yêu cầu phát triển nhanh và bền vững của các quốc gia, thúc đẩy cải tổ toàn diện WTO để hoạt động tích cực, hiệu quả hơn. Ba là đảm bảo quản trị toàn cầu linh hoạt, hiệu quả, tạo nên hệ sinh thái cho phát triển mạnh mẽ trong kỷ nguyên chuyển đổi số, chuyển đổi xanh. Tôi mong G20 cùng các cơ chế đa phương tăng cường đối thoại, xây dựng khuôn khổ quản trị toàn cầu, hài hòa giữa kinh tế, xã hội và môi trường, giữa hiện tại và tương lai, công bằng, cân bằng lợi ích giữa các nền kinh tế với nhau, thúc đẩy hợp tác về trí tuệ nhân tạo, biến đổi khí hậu, phòng chống thiên tai, dịch bệnh. Thưa quý vị, cố Tổng thống Nelson Mandela từng nói, chừng nào nghèo đói, bất công và bất bình đẳng vẫn còn tồn tại trên thế giới, không ai trong chúng ta có thể thực sự nghỉ ngơi. Việt Nam sẵn sàng hợp tác tích cực, bình đẳng, cùng có lợi với các nước G20 và cộng đồng quốc tế vì một thế giới hòa bình, văn minh, thịnh vượng, phát triển bền vững và bao trùm, không để ai bị bỏ lại phía sau, để mọi người dân đều được hưởng từ thành quả của phát triển và hội nhập quốc tế sâu rộng, thực chất và hiệu quả. Xin trân trọng cảm ơn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now call upon His Excellency Mr. Sifi Grieb, Prime Minister of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria, to take the floor.
شكرا سيد الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا. اسمحوا لي أولا أن أنقل إليكم تحيات رئيس الجمهورية السيد عبد المجيد تبون الذي شرفني بإلقاء الكلمة التي يوجهها لهذه القمة. هذا نصها. فخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا رئيس جمهورية جنوب أفريقيا، أصحاب الفخامة رؤساء الدول والحكومات، السيدات والسادة الحضور الكريم، يسعدني بداية أن أعرب عن خالص شكري لفخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوزا على دعوته الكريمة لبلدي للمشاركة في هذه القمة الهامة التي نفخر بانعقادها لأول مرة في أرض إفريقية، مشيدا عاليا بالأولويات والمواضيع المقترحة خلال جلساتها، بما يعكس إدراكا ووعيا كبيرين بحجم التحديات المعقدة التي تواجه عالمنا اليوم على الصعيدين السياسي الاقتصادي، وتؤثر أيما تأثير على التجانس العالمي إن لم يتم التكفل بها بشكل جدي جماعي وسريع. السيد الرئيس، فيما يخص الأولويات المطروحة على طاولة اجتماعنا هذا، اسمحوا لي بالتطرق إلى النقاط التالية. أولاً، تجدد الجزائر الدعوة إلى معالجة عاجلة لمسألة ثقل المديونية وخدماتها على الدول النامية والأكثر فقراً من خلال مقاربة تتضمن مسح جانب منها أو تحويلها إلى استثمارات مباشرة ومجدية في هذه الدول، مع مراعاة ضرورة تصحيح التعقيدات التقنية لمسألة تقييم المخاطر من خلال إصلاحات عميقة تسمح بإيجاد مخرج للدول التي تئن تحت وطأة الديون السيادية. ثانياً، تضم الجزائر صوتها إلى أصوات الدول الداعية إلى إصلاح المنظمات المالية الدولية ضمن مقاربة حوكمة اقتصادية ومالية راشدة من خلال مراجعة آليات اتخاذ القرار بشكل يضمن تمثيلا عادلا ومنصفا وشفافا للدول النامية والقارة الإفريقية في هيئات تسيير هذه المؤسسات. ثالثا، إن الجزائر التي ما فتئت ترافع من أجل تعبئة التمويلات الدولية وحشد الموارد لدعم الجهود العالمية لتمكين الدول النامية والدول الأكثر فقراً من وسائل وتكنولوجيات الانتقال نحو استعمال الطاقة الخضراء، تدعو من هذا المنبر إلى تجسيد شراكات ثنائية ودولية في هذا المجال. رابعاً، تؤيد الجزائر جميع المبادرات الرامية إلى الرفع من حجم التمويلات المخصصة للوقاية من المخاطر الكبرى والاستجابة السريعة للكوارث، وتدعو إلى حث المؤسسات المالية والبنوك الدولية للتفكير في آلية تمويل تفعل في حال ما إذا طلبت إحدى البلدان المتضررة ذلك. السيد الرئيس، لقد شهد العالم قرابة عامين متتاليين الجرائم الشنعاء التي ارتكبت في حق الشعب الفلسطيني الأعزل، وعاين حجم الدمار الذي خلفته هذه الحرب الهمجية، الأمر الذي يدفعنا للإعراب عن أملنا في أن تبادر دول مجموعة العشرين بإطلاق تعبئة عامة قصد بناء غد أفضل للشعب الفلسطيني، مؤكدا التزام بلادي بإعلان انضمامها إلى كل خطوة قد تتخذها بهذا الصدد. أشكركم على حسن الإصغاء.
Thank you. There was no real instantaneous translation to that input. Could the translation people look into it? But we now move on. Can it be done now? Yes, let it be done.
Excellency President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I would like to convey to you the greetings of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, who entrusted me with delivering his address to the summit as follows. Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic.
For our 2021 recommendation on ethics of AI, together with the African Union and the South African G20 presidency, we have launched the AI in Africa initiative, aligned with the the African Union's 2024 AI strategy. We'll train around 20,000 civil servants and judicial professionals and 2,000 teachers and students, and support 25 additional African countries integrating AI into national policies. Second, in education, we are championing innovative financing to ensure that does not hinder learning. In 2023, for instance, we facilitated the agreement between Côte d'Ivoire and France to convert debt into investment in education. Third, in culture, from combating illicit trafficking to supporting culture and the creative industries, and safeguarding heritage and traditional knowledge, UNESCO continues to affirm that no sustainable development is possible without culture, as reaffirmed in the Pact for the Future. Excellencies, UNESCO stands ready to deepen its role as an active member of the multilateral system and as a committed partner of the G20. Your priorities resonate with every dimension of our mandate and expertise. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much indeed. I now call upon Her Excellency, Ms. Rebecca Grace-Pan. May you.
President Ramaphosa, Excellencies, being here, one cannot help but reflect on this country's trajectory. South Africa has much to teach to the world. You have used this G20 presidency to share your hard-won wisdom, that moving together is not inevitable. It is chosen, daily, deliberately. This year, you have championed the debt challenge echoed by so many economies and countries here today. You have championed fighting commodity dependence, pushing for productive diversification and value added. And you have championed the need for the Global South to have a voice, not just a presence. Thank you for your courage and conviction, Mr. President. Excellencies, since COVID, the global economy has grown by more than $30 trillion, equivalent to the entire world GDP in the year 2000. Trade will grow 4% this year, despite all tensions, with South-South trade growing twice as much. AI is reshaping entire sectors and driving investment. Clean energy is advancing faster than even optimists predicted. The motion is undeniable. But trillions in aggregate growth mean little when tariffs close markets you were starting to reach, when borrowing costs are 3 times that others pay, when debt service absorbs budgets meant for development. Yes, the world economy this year showed resilience that deserves celebration. But resilience, I insist, is not necessarily stability nor prosperity. And the forces driving today's resilience aren't always the same that will sustain tomorrow's development. When some advance as others fall back, we do not move together. We break apart. Excellencies, we stand at a moment of extraordinary promise. Developing countries want a fair share of that promise. They don't want support, they want a level playing field. The G20 is uniquely placed to strengthen the trade system and build the financial, global, and regional architecture that can give us just that. This is how resilience becomes stability, how motion becomes progress, how we ensure no one gets left behind. I thank you.
Thank you indeed. I now would like to call His Excellency Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, to take the floor.
President Ramaphosa, Excellencies, first, congratulations to President Ramaphosa and South Africa on hosting the first G20 Summit in Africa. Thanks to investments in health over the past 20 years, global life expectancy has increased by more than 6 years, under 5 mortality has dropped by more than 50%, and maternal mortality has dropped by more than 40%. In the same time frame, at least 25 countries have moved from low income to lower middle income, lower or upper middle income countries. That's no coincidence. Investments in health are investments in human capital, productivity, and economic growth. Conversely, COVID-19 showed that when health is at risk, everything is at risk. The pandemic killed an estimated 20 million people and wiped around $10 trillion from global GDP. WHO thanks the G20 for its leadership on strengthening health security, but more needs to be done. And pandemics are not the only threat to the health of people and economies. So are non-communicable diseases such as heart disease, cancer, and communicable diseases such as HIV, TB, malaria, and diabetes and vaccine-preventable diseases. Health is not simply an outcome of development. It is the means. That means the global crisis in health financing is also a crisis for development and economic growth. But in this crisis lies an opportunity for countries to transition away from aid dependency towards a new era of sovereignty and self-reliance. WHO is supporting countries to make that transition, and we urge the G20 to provide the support to provide countries based on their needs, in line with the Lusaka agenda, because solidarity is our immunity. I thank you, and back to you, President.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghebreyesus. I now want to call Her Excellency Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the Director General of the World Trade Organization.
Thank you, Your Excellency President Ramaphosa, and thank you, colleagues, leaders, excellencies. I'm really heartened by the way that, I'm heartened that we're still in here with the thunder. I'm heartened by the way that trade has been at the center of most of the discussion today, and the strong support for the reform of the multilateral trading system and the WTO. I want to commend and thank the South African presidency for putting the focus squarely on economic growth, which also means, in a way, putting the focus on trade. Economic growth is the precondition for progress on all the key challenges confronting us, from climate to inequality to geopolitical tensions. My message today is really simple. We cannot achieve sustained inclusive global growth without sustained inclusive global trade. We cannot support more inclusive growth for Africa if we don't support a free, fair, and inclusive global trading system. Put another way, if trade uncertainty, fragmentation, and protectionism continue to rise, we can only expect sluggish growth or worse.
3 pages of the Declaration of the Leaders talks about energy and renewable energy and the just acquisition of energy, talking about 600 million Africans, about half of the continent, that do not have access to electricity. And so yesterday we saw the European Union President Ursula von der Leyen.
But since 2010, trade growth has fallen to 1/3 of its previous pace. Foreign direct investment has been flat, and GDP growth has trended around 2.8%, not 3.5%. If global growth had continued at its previous pace, the world economy would be almost 1/10 larger in size in real terms today. A major reason is clear. Trade opening has slowed, integration has plateaued, and protectionism has increased. The WTO's latest G20 monitoring report shows new tariffs affecting 4 times more trade, about $2.6 trillion, between October of last year and October of this year than in the previous reporting period, the sharpest increase since WTO monitoring began. The global trading system has shown resilience. You've all heard me repeat, and I will not stop doing it, that almost 3/4 of world trade, 72%, is still on WTO terms. So the system is showing unprecedented resilience, despite the disruptions and undermining that has occurred. But its expansion has slowed. A static trading system not only means less competition, less innovation, and weaker growth, but also rising geopolitical tensions. Strong growth fosters a positive sum mindset, the belief that prosperity can be shared. Stagnant growth fuels zero-sum thinking, the belief that one can only advance at another's expense. That is why we need pro-growth WTO reform, reform that opens markets, reduces distortions, improves transparency, provides workable dispute settlement, supports the development of poorer countries, and repositions the system to harness the 21st century economy's huge and exciting potential in green, services-led, and digitally delivered trade. If every member is not ready to move forward, then we need a more flexible WTO, so those members who want to advance can. The WTO's 14th Ministerial Conference in March 2026 provides an opportunity to lay out a clear roadmap. I want to thank the leaders today for the message that I clearly heard, that I hope will go to trade ministers and to WTO ambassadors to define that roadmap for reform at the conference. We are working on it now, and I hope it will be ready. Your support here is invaluable. Excellencies, let me conclude by saying, if the G20 wants to drive more inclusive and sustainable growth, then support for WTO reform is essential, as you've all stated, not for the WTO's sake, but for the sake of global trade, global growth and development, and above all, for the well-being of the citizens of its members. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, my sister. I now want to call His Excellency Mr. Ajay Banga, the President of the World Bank Group.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the arrangements, including the thunderclap just when Ngozi began to speak, considering our focus in the WTO. In the next 10 to 15 years, 1.2 billion young people, largely from Africa, by the way, will enter the workforce in the developing economies. They will be competing for about 400 million jobs. That is a large gap. With jobs, this generation will power the economy. Without jobs, this will be a very serious challenge. Therefore, jobs have to be at the center of any development, economic, or security strategy. And for us in the bank, it is at the core of our work going forward. Our three-pillar strategy on jobs focuses on private sector job creation, because that is where 90% of jobs are created, and on fostering entrepreneurship for the young. The first pillar is that our public sector arms help governments to develop essential infrastructure. Physical, roads, ports, power, our M300 effort with the African Development Bank is in that category. And then human, healthcare and skilling. Our work on healthcare with Tedros and the government of Japan is in that category. Our knowledge bank helps to build businesses. That's the second pillar. Friendly environments with clear and fair rules and sound economic management. And the third pillar is our private sector arms. Through equity, through capital, through guarantees, we help to reduce risk, allow investors to see a path for return. The thing is that capital alone cannot address the challenge, because the challenge here is also the debt issue that some of you have raised. How are we trying to help? We've helped 14 countries raise more and spend better via public finance reviews. We have got 22 more in the pipeline to be done in the next 6 months. We're deploying debt for development tools. I heard that topic come up a couple of times. To unlock resources, we started with Côte d'Ivoire. 9 more of these are in the pipeline, and we have the appetite to do more. Last year, IDA net flows hit $21 billion, overwhelming majority to Africa. I want to contradict the statement from Russia about the amount of money we put into Africa. The World Bank last year put $40 billion of our own balance sheet into Africa. That is the single largest amount ever in our history, and the largest amount of any multilateral bank in Africa. This is up from, by the way, the IDA net flows are up from 12 billion just 3 years ago. A lifeline for countries that are facing liquidity challenges. And then we're working with my friend in the IMF to support countries facing liquidity pressures through domestic revenue reform, increased financing, and like I said, debt for development swaps. But I've said this a few times now, more is needed. The common framework can advance debt restructuring faster through the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable. We are supporting a maximum 12-month goal for a country to come into the pipe and be ready at the other end. And then there is the opportunity that Japan mentioned to strengthen debt transparency if all G20 countries participate in the World Bank's debt data reconciliation exercises. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, my brother Ajay Banga. I now call upon Fanfen Ruanyindo Kayaringwa, Assistant Director General of the International Labour Organization.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the ILO commends G20 leaders for recognizing the significant threats that inequality, unemployment, underemployment, and informal employment pose to economic growth, development, and economic and social stability. Employment must be placed at the center of economic policies if these are to forge inclusive economic growth that leaves no one behind. We need to ensure that all can equally access to ladders of opportunity, delivering them out of working poverty and into decent work. Yet the reality today is that ILO estimates that 3.8 billion people don't have any form of social protection. In the face of multiple transformations underway, too many remain insecure and vulnerable, lacking sustainable pathways out of working poverty and into formal employment. The creation of productive opportunity for decent work and implementation of universal and adaptive social protection system, including floors, can serve as engines of inclusive growth, ensuring economic policies drive productivity and deliver a future with social justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but one speaker is Her Excellency Ms. Ahuna Eziakonyo, Acting Administrator, UNDP.
Your Excellency, in the interest of time, UNDP would like to align with the statement of our UN Secretary General. Thank you very much.
Thank you. His Excellency Maximo Dorino Cullen, Food and Agricultural Organization.
Thank you, President Cyril Ramaphosa and South Africa for your leadership and successful presidency. Excellencies, the spirit of Ubuntu, I am because we are, captures the mindset we need to end hunger and poverty. An urgency is essential. In 2024, 673 million people were chronically undernourished and 839 million live in extreme poverty. These numbers demand a collective action at scale. FAO welcomes South Africa G20 presidency for building on Brazil's leadership through the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty, and for placing inequality at the center of its food security agenda, and for underscoring the need for adequate and predictable financing. Without real action on inequality and financing, progress will remain fragile. The Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts shows that inequality is structural and persistent. The rural-urban divide is decisive. The world's extreme poor live in rural areas, most dependent on agriculture. Climate variability threatens to widen this divide and could push up 132 million more people into extreme poverty in 2030. By 2030, the world will have 1.2 billion youth, with 500 million already working in the agri-food systems, often in vulnerable, low-productivity jobs. Rural youth unemployment is nearly double urban levels. Transforming the agri-food system is essential to create a decent work for young people and achieve SDGs 1 and 2. We welcome the G20 principles for inclusive growth and reducing inequality, the inclusion of agri-food systems in Principle 10, and the commitment to universal social protection.
Excellencies, the world cannot afford just incremental change. FAO estimates that $1.1 trillion annually is required to transform agri-food systems. And this is achievable through greater efficiency, reduced duplication, and a stronger convergence of MDB support toward best practices and country needs. Through our hand-in-hand initiative, we channel investments where impact is greatest. The Compromiso de Sevilla is an important step towards mobilizing the scale required. Let us act, guided by Ubuntu, to build a more just, resilient, and food-secure world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the inputs or the interventions in session 1. We did, in terms of our program, include presentations very briefly of the 2 reports that many of you have already referred to, which is the report of the Africa Expert Panel and the report on inequality. We're going to ask the presenters to take no more than just 3 minutes each, just introducing those reports. The reports are quite substantial, and they will be read at leisure by members, states, and members of various organizations. This is just an opportunity for the reports to be formally introduced. I thereafter want to move on to session 2, which member states are now getting ready to make interventions in. Let me then call Mr. Joel Nechitenje to table the report on the Africa Expert Panel, and thereafter get the other report to be tabled.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I was checking, you gave us 3 minutes, and so I'll be very, very brief. Firstly, to indicate that the Africa Expert Panel was set up by the South African presidency in order to make a contribution to the finance stream with specific focus on Africa's conditions and interests. Its organizing framework is that the greatest opportunity for global prosperity in this century lies in African productivity and African progress. And it then argues that Africa is involved in the implementation of a variety of programs which are based on its visions and strategies. Vision 2063, Africa Mining Vision, Vision on Critical Minerals, and so on. So based on those visions and programs, Africa is engaged in its own activities to improve the conditions of life of Africa's people. And so it says to the G20 and to the global community, join Africa and partner it in realizing the objectives that it has set itself. In other words, the purpose of the report is not to ask for aid. It's not to ask for assistance. It's to make the fundamental point that Africa is involved in its own programs to improve the conditions of life of its people, and partnership with Africa will be in the interest of humanity. We say in the conclusion that the G20 nations must act now, not with rhetoric, but with real commitment to investment, reform, and partnership. This is not a call for charity, it is a call for a new global compact that positions Africa as a pillar of a more balanced, prosperous, and resilient international order. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Joel Nachitenje. That was exactly less than 3 minutes. We'd like to thank you for that. The next report is on inequality, and I'd like to ask Professor Jayati Ghosh and Ms. Winnie Byanyima to present the report. And they also have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, President Ramaphosa, also for the honor of presenting at all to the G20 meeting. We will try and take 4 minutes, if you allow us, 2 for me and 2 for Winnie Byanyima, because we have some important points to make, very, very briefly, if you will forgive us. It is a great honor and privilege. We just want to identify some of the major trends that we found while consulting extensively for this report. And we really would like to emphasize also a proposal that we have, which we believe is ultimately very achievable. First, global inequality remains very high. It did come down slightly since 2000 because of China, but it remains very high, and recent years have seen an increase. But mostly, the problem is the concentration of wealth and income at the top, and the excessive power that that generates to influence regulations, to influence institutions, and to impact on what governments do. We found also that there is a very significant shift in terms of public and private wealth. Private wealth has accelerated dramatically, often because of a transfer of net assets from public to private hands, which in turn has reduced the fiscal space of governments. We found also that, contrary to what was a common belief, inequality hampers growth. It actually inhibits better performance, and therefore, G20 leaders from across the political spectrum, if you want to see broad-based progress that benefits citizens, then you must take steps to address inequality. We also found that inequality undermines political stability and democracy, as has already been mentioned, and leads to very adverse social and environmental impacts, particularly through its multidimensional effects. I now pass on to Winnie Byanyima.
Thank you, Jayati. Thank you, Excellency the President. I too thank you for commissioning us and for putting this issue of inequality at the very heart of the international agenda. It's historic. Jayati has set out the drivers of inequality. Our report considers different practical, pragmatic, and very possible ways to respond to these drivers of inequality, much of it based on what governments are doing or have done. Your Excellencies, whether it is about reining in corporate concentration and monopolistic behavior, whether it is about reforming intellectual property regimes while fostering innovation, whether it's about governments providing needed fiscal space for developing countries, all these are achievable through international cooperation. So our report looks at ways to achieve this through national or international means. Our main recommendation, the primary recommendation of this report, is the creation of an international panel on inequality. We find that there is a lot of information out there. Knowledge has been collected, many data sets. However, we find the more we know, the less we know. And the more we know, the more we understand the need to have a platform where there is reliable, comprehensive knowledge for all to use. We envisage a globally balanced international body that would provide a technical service to synthesize and provide authoritative and independent assessments and analysis of inequality. It will be available to everyone, policymakers, private sector, civil society, trade unions, and the media. Our recommendation is inspired by the tremendous work of the IPCC, which has helped governments to address climate change, or also the approach of the new Scientific Panel on Artificial Intelligence. We do not envisage some big global institution, but a lean body bringing together a network of research institutions and individual scholars and experts. It should have authority and carefully guarded independence. Most of the work will largely be done by researchers contributing their time voluntarily. So far, we see that 700 economists and other experts across 70 countries, including Nobel laureates, have asked you, Your Excellencies, to support this initiative and have offered to contribute to its work. Over 30 former presidents and prime ministers have also endorsed the proposal. We're pleased to see governments supporting this new body. We are hopeful that many more governments will support it as a practical way to help your own policymakers to address inequality. It would be a game changer at the crossroads of academia, policy, and practice. Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for entrusting us with this important task. We hope that the distinguished leaders of the G20 sitting here in South Africa, the country that has experienced inequality like no other, will decide to take forward this vital new initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my two sisters, for presenting this report, and indeed thank you to Mr. Joel Nechidanje. These are the two reports that we spoke about when we started, and we thought that they should be deposited here, much as they have not really been formally discussed during the whole process of the G20. They are deposited here so that we may all internalize them, discuss them. There are reports that can be taken forward in a number of other forums. And we hope that having been introduced here, the G20, we will be able to interface with them in our various other organizations and as governments and organizations and see the best way of taking them forward. I do know, for instance, a suggestion has been made that the African Union, for instance, should take forward these reports, and I'm sure other organizations will do so as well. So thank you very much. These reports are important, and we thank you for presenting them. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I now take you to the second session, A Resilient World, the G20's Contribution, Disaster Risk Reduction, Climate Change, Just Energy Transitions, and Food Systems. I will now allow inputs or interventions, and we had hoped that those who wish to make interventions on this topic should be able to do so, and those who feel that they would like to make interventions in the third session can forego whatever intervention they wish to make. I do have a list. We are working against time because the morning was rather important in terms of having the declaration adopted, but allowing those who were making interventions a little bit more time as they wanted to express themselves. Now, we want to limit inputs to strictly the minutes that are set out, 4 minutes each, and thereafter we will go to 3 minutes each for invited countries. I will make my intervention later, and I would now like to ask President Lula da Silva, the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, to make his intervention in this regard.
Eu quero, mais uma vez, reiterar meus cumprimentos ao presidente Ramaphosa, cumprimentar a presidenta da Namíbia, a senhora Netumbo, e também cumprimentar o Antônio Guterres, secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, por meio de quem eu cumprimento todas as entidades internacionais aqui presentes. Esta oportuna sessão ocorre no mesmo tempo em que estamos por 2 palavras para concluirmos as negociações da COP30 no Brasil. No ano em que o planeta ultrapassou pela primeira vez, e talvez de forma permanente, o limite de 1,5 graus acima dos níveis pré-industriais, a comunidade internacional tinha diante de si uma escolha: continuar ou desistir. Optamos pela primeira alternativa. Na COP da verdade, a ciência prevaleceu. O multilateralismo venceu. Reafirmamos nosso compromisso com o Acordo de Paris. Saímos de Belém com um quadro renovado de contribuições nacionalmente determinadas. Mobilizamos a sociedade civil, a academia, o setor privado, os povos indígenas e os movimentos sociais, para fazer da COP30 a COP com a 2ª maior participação da história. Entramos agora numa nova etapa que exigirá esforço simultâneo em 2 frentes. Acelerar as ações do enfrentamento da mudança do clima e nos preparar para uma nova realidade climática. O G20 cumpre papel central em ambas. O grupo responde por 77% das emissões globais. É do G20 que um novo modelo de economia deve emergir. O grupo é um ator-chave na elaboração de um mapa do caminho para afastar o mundo dos combustíveis fósseis. A COP30 mostrou que o mundo precisa enfrentar esse debate. A semente dessa proposta foi plantada e irá frutificar, mais cedo ou mais tarde. A mudança do clima não é uma simples questão de política ambiental. É, sobretudo, um desafio de planejamento econômico. As prioridades estão invertidas. É inconcebível que não sejamos capazes de mobilizar $1,3 trilhão em financiamento climático, enquanto o dobro desse montante é consumido por despesas militares. Fortalecer a capacidade de prevenção e resposta a desastres é uma questão de vida ou morte. Sistemas de alerta precoce não bastam. O sistema vai colocar às provas nossas pontes, rodovias, edifícios e linha de transmissão. Vai exigir forma mais eficiente de gerir a água, cultivar alimentos e produzir energia. Vai obrigar milhares de pessoas e de negócios a buscarem áreas mais seguras para viver e empreender. Os princípios voluntários para investir em redução de risco e de desastres, aprovados sob a liderança sul-africana do G20, enfatizam a necessidade de financiamento de longo prazo. Construir resiliência não é gasto, é investimento. Para cada dólar investido em adaptação, ganha-se $4 em prejuízos evitados e outros benefícios sociais e econômicos. Mas um mundo resiliente não se faz apenas com infraestrutura. Quando alguém é atingido por um evento extremo, são as políticas públicas do Estado que ajudam a se reerguer. Contudo, cerca da metade da população mundial não conta com proteção social. Quase 700 milhões de pessoas ainda sofrem com a fome. Vai contra nosso sentido mais elementar de justiça permitir que as maiores vítimas da crise climática seja aquela que menos contribuíram para causá-la. O Brasil lançou na COP30 a Declaração de Belém sobre fome, pobreza e ação climática, centrada nas pessoas. Nela, reforçamos 3 compromissos: fortalecer a proteção social, apoiar pequenos produtores e garantir alternativas de vida sustentáveis para comunidades que vivem nas florestas. O G20 pode proteger cadeias alimentares por meio de medidas como compras públicas e seguros rurais. Também pode remunerar quem preserva as florestas por meio do Fundo Florestas Tropicais para Sempre, lançado na COP30. Só haverá transição justa se o G20 liderar o caminho. Como nos ensinou Nelson Mandela, tudo parece impossível até que esteja feito. A hora de fazer é agora. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, President Lula. I'd now like to ask His Excellency President João Manuel Lorenzo, the President of the Republic of Angola and the Chairperson of the African Union, to take the floor.
Muito obrigado. Sua Excelência Cyril Ramaphosa, Presidente da República da África do Sul e Presidente do G20, Suas Excelências, minhas senhoras, meus senhores, Excelências. A recuperação global após a pandemia da Covid-19 realçou a importância de um mundo resiliente. Contudo, o nosso planeta e as populações continuam a enfrentar efeitos e impactos catastróficos do aquecimento global. As alterações climáticas são uma realidade e têm vindo a afetar gravemente a segurança alimentar, ao perturbarem os sistemas alimentares, para além de gerarem conflitos e provocar deslocações de pessoas, agravando ainda mais a crise humanitária existente. O novo Programa Abrangente de Desenvolvimento Agrícola para a África, a Estratégia de Kampala e o Plano de Ação 2026-2035 focam-se na construção de sistemas agroalimentares resilientes e sustentáveis. O Programa Abrangente de Desenvolvimento Agrícola para a África, em particular com o Grupo de Trabalho do G20 para a Segurança Alimentar, criado pela Presidência Sul-Africana, em conjunto com as organizações internacionais relevantes, como a FAO e o PAM, continuará a apoiar a implementação da Aliança Global contra a Fome e a Pobreza, lançada durante a presidência do G20 do Brasil. Aplaudimos as abordagens inspiradas na filosofia africana sobre segurança alimentar e nutrição. Enaltecemos a liderança da presidência sul-africana no avanço da Agenda Global de Segurança Alimentar e Nutricional através da criação deste grupo de trabalho e propomos a sua continuidade no âmbito do nosso programa. Excelências, as transições para uma energia justa e verde requerem a estabilização sine qua non da situação de paz e segurança, particularmente em África, além do reforço da resiliência e do facto de que a resposta e preparação para desastres naturais deve permanecer no centro das nossas preocupações. Neste sentido, em alinhamento com a estratégia da União Africana sobre as alterações climáticas e desenvolvimento resiliente, saudamos os resultados da COP30, realizada recentemente em Belém do Pará, no Brasil, incluindo os respectivos mecanismos de financiamento verde e azul para regiões e países fortemente impactados pelas alterações climáticas. Considero que o G20 deve reafirmar o seu firme compromisso com a Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas sobre as Alterações Climáticas e o Acordo de Paris, e mobilizar esforços para acelerar a plena implementação de todos os objetivos metas e mecanismos acordados, especialmente no que respeita ao financiamento climático. Convictos da importância vital de investir nas transições energéticas, o presidente da União Africana assumiu a liderança na Congregação dos Parceiros de Desenvolvimento de África para a busca de soluções adequadas para o financiamento das infraestruturas continentais críticas. Agradeço o apoio dos líderes e países do G20, assim como das instituições internacionais que se associaram a nós nesta relevante missão. Excelências, esta cimeira do G20 reveste de um caráter fundamental para a renovação e o reforço dos nossos compromissos coletivos multilaterais em prol do avanço de um desenvolvimento global equitativo. Para este efeito, o continente africano contribuirá de forma ativa por intermédio da Zona de Comércio Livre Continental Africana, um dos maiores mercados econômicos integrados do mundo. Em paralelo e tendo em conta a abundância de recursos naturais críticos e estratégicos de que dispõe, as vastas reservas de biodiversidade e o seu potencial demográfico, a África terá um papel incontornável nos contributos que prestará para impulsionar a transição verde à escala global. Concretizaremos este objetivo com o envolvimento de todos nós. Muito obrigado pela atenção prestada.
Thank you, President Lorenzo. We will start to pick up pace, as I will ask the interventions to stick to the time allocated. I now ask His Excellency Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, to take the floor.
Well, thank you very much, President Ramaphosa. Each and every one of our nations is home to unique natural treasures, and all of our citizens are living with the environmental reality of climate change. Australians have always known drought, floods and bushfires, but they're more intense and they're more frequent. And as we meet here today, there is a cyclone has hit Darwin with devastating impact on that community in Australia's north. The truth is that climate change carries a human toll for communities battling natural disasters and for those who depend upon the land for their livelihood. It has a devastating impact on our economies. So the argument that somehow you can take action on climate change or support economic growth is a false one. We need to deal with the challenge of climate change in order to ensure that our economies can grow. It is critical that we embrace clean energy, and this represents a generational economic opportunity. The G20 enables us to bring global ambition and global cooperation to this task. And the vital message that we must send to the world is that action on climate change is not a matter of asking any nation to forego the jobs, prosperity or security that its people deserve. It's about working with every nation to power the next generation of economic growth while protecting the environment for generations to come. Next year, we will assist Turkey in hosting the COP meeting in Antalya. And we will work constructively to ensure that there are positive outcomes. South Africa's prioritisation of disaster resilience during your G20 presidency reflects the pressing need for collective action. And Australia is proud to be matching our words with actions. At the UN in September, I announced our new 2035 emissions reduction target of 62 to 70% by then. Our target is ambitious, but importantly, it is achievable. It provides the certainty for new national and global investment in jobs and industries of clean energy. At home, Australia is investing in our Disaster Ready Fund to support communities devastated by these natural disasters. In our region, we're supporting the Pacific family to respond to natural disasters and prepare for them with our Australian Humanitarian Partnerships $100 million Disaster Ready program, and we've put in an additional $100 million into the Pacific Resilience Facility that will be so important going forward. We're also investing in climate-smart agricultural practices, and here on the African continent, the Africa-Australia Partnership for Climate Responsive Agriculture aims to guard against food shortages. Colleagues, none of our nations are immune from the environmental challenges of climate change. All of our citizens can benefit from the opportunities of clean energy. As a forum and as leaders, we have a responsibility to our children and grandchildren and the generations to come to make sure that we choose to do the right thing, not choose between protecting our environment or securing our prosperity. We can do both, and indeed we must do both, because each depends on the other.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for sticking to your time. I now want to ask His Excellency, Prime Minister of Canada, Dr. Mark Joseph Carney, to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I will try to follow the Australian example. Let me start. This session is on resilience, and I want to join others who pointed out in the first session the fragility of armed conflict, condemning Russia's illegal, unjustified, and barbaric invasion of Ukraine, the appalling conflict in Sudan, and our support for all efforts that can lead to just and lasting peace. Now let me speak to climate change. It's been over a decade that we've realized that past is not prologue with respect to climate change. In other words, the tail risks of yesterday become the central scenarios of today. Tipping points are now being realized, and I want to give an example. 2 years ago, the forest fires in Canada alone made Canada the 4th largest emitter of carbon in the world. We have the example of the Darwin cyclone. This year, forest fire damage forests bigger than Sierra Leone, to give orders of magnitude. So we need action on all levels: mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. International collaboration is crucial. I want to thank our hosts, South Africa, Mexico, and others who sent firefighters to Canada to help fight the fires. Coordination through early warning systems. The wildfire satellite system that we're putting in place as part of the G7 global public good, the work of the G20 in disaster risk reduction. Nature-based solutions. We're working towards our 30-30 commitment under the Montreal Kunming Protocol. I want to support the Tropical Forest Financing Facility of Brazil's COP, as well as the broader effort, and congratulate them on that. In terms of our own mitigation, I'll just frame it as follows. We view addressing climate change as a moral duty, but also a commercial imperative, as Prime Minister Albanese just intimated. So our strategy on reducing emissions is a climate competitiveness strategy because it will make our businesses stronger. I referenced in my earlier comments blended finance. I'll just reinforce those, the importance of those efforts, including through the World Bank and beyond. But I want to highlight a few other issues before my time is up. First, the importance of high-integrity, standardized carbon markets that have the potential to shift capital flows to those most affected by climate change, including being integrated with JETPs, such as the JETP here, changing the incentives and the financial calculations to decarbonize. I'd suggest that we can catalyze enormous private sector demand for these credits by committing AI data center development to be carbon neutral. We need a price on carbon. I salute my neighbor, the European Union, in pricing carbon and putting in place a CBAM. I'm going to conclude by drawing attention to the situation of one of the members around this table, and I hope Prime Minister Holness of Jamaica will allow me. The economic cost of Hurricane Melissa is about 40% of Jamaica's GDP. Now, through remarkable discipline, Jamaica had reduced their debt to GDP by over 50 percentage points in recent years. That is all gone with the explosive hurricane. This demonstrates the importance of investing in resilience in advance,
the importance of catastrophic risk insurance, and the reality of what climate change is doing to our countries. I salute the ambition of the G20 presidency, Turkey for hosting COP alongside Australia next year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The challenge that Jamaica faced is a really sad story, and putting the figures that you have, Prime Minister Carney, just makes the case much more a devastating one. Your Excellencies, I am receiving requests for countries who want to forgo their right to speak. That is very welcome, because that shortens our list so that we can finish in time to go and have the time to have the dinner that has been prepared. So if any country is moved to follow the same example as the United Kingdom and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, who have forgone their right to speak, please do indicate so that we do not have to call you up. My next speaker who will be making an intervention is His Excellency, the Premier of the People's Republic of China, His Excellency Li Qiang. Please take the floor.
谢谢拉马福萨总统，各位同事，当前气候变、能源、粮食等多种挑战叠加，尤其需要国际社会以团结凝聚力量，靠协作破解难题。G20应当发扬伙伴精神，展现更加积极的政治意愿，推动更为广泛的国际合作，共同应对挑战，合力推进发展。第一，加强生态环保合作，提升发展韧性。气候和生态问题关系全人类的长远发展。这些年，全球极端天气等事件频发，实施巴黎协定目标时间紧迫，任重道远。G20应当秉持科学精神，坚持共同但有区别的责任原则，体现担当，抓紧行动。中国已经宣布新一轮国家自主贡献的目标，我愿意同各方加强昆明、蒙特利尔全球生物多样性框架的之内的合作，推动第30届联合国气变大会成果加快落地。第二，加强绿色能源合作，推进公正转型，太阳能、风能等新能源天然具有普惠公平的特点，推动能源体系绿色转型，不仅为人类发展提供强劲动能，也将更好地保障各国平等发展的权利。G20应当推动全球绿色产业合作，保持产业链、供应链的稳定畅通，促进相关技术、产品等自由流通应用。中国已经建成全球最大的可再生能源体系，我们同100多个国家和地区开展了绿色能源合作。过去5年，向世界提供的风电、光伏产品累计为其他国家减少约41亿吨的碳排放。中方愿意继续以自身所能为各国能源转型提供支持。第三，加强粮食安全合作，保障稳定供应。现在全球仍然有7亿多人面临饥饿的威胁，必须采取切实行动，为他们提供必要的帮助。G20应当推动优化全球粮食流通供给，构建大宗商品合作伙伴关系，建设开放、稳定、可持续的全球粮食市场，强化对粮食短缺国家的供应保障。同时，我们要用好 G20 农业部长会等相关平台，加强农业科技合作，提升粮食生产能力。 中方也愿意同各国一起推动落实国际粮食安全合作倡议，为抗击饥饿与贫困做出新的贡献。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Premier Lee. I now ask His Excellency Antonio da Costa, the President of the European Council, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Natural and man-made disasters are happening more and more often. They are increasing in intensity and having devastating consequences worldwide. The threat to our communities, our environment, and our prosperity is very real. Take the case of wildfires. In 2025 alone, the equivalent of 1/3 of land size of Argentina has burned down. The European Union strongly supports the approach, priorities, and efforts of the South African presidency of G20 on disaster risk reduction, the ex-post approach. But in this session, I choose to talk about root causes. Yes, climate change is real, and together with biodiversity loss and pollution, it can still be stopped. Despite progress, global pledges to cut emissions are not sufficient to limit the rise of temperatures to 1.5 degrees warming. The European Union is a global leader in this effort, and we are staying the course, fully committed to the Paris Agreement. A couple of weeks ago, we committed to an ambitious intermediate goal of reducing emissions by 90% by 2040. The European Union will remain a trusted partner in supporting the countries most exposed to climate change. Last year, the European Union provided 31.7 billion euros from public sources, and we mobilized 11 billion euros of private finance to support developing countries to reduce emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. As Union of Values, we will continue to support this agenda. But we cannot do this alone, and we invite all G20 members to join us in taking bold collective action to secure a sustainable future for all.
Thank you. Thank you. I now ask Her Excellency Dr. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, to take the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Cyril. This time I want to speak about the same topic like my friend Antonio Costa, climate change, but here focus on energy transitions. And it is a message of hope and opportunity that I want to bring to this G20 summit. It's a message about clean energy technologies and clean energy transitions. Not only do they meet our urgent need to tackle climate change, they do much more than that. Clean energy transitions are cost competitive as never before. They create jobs at home. They open new ways to bring modern energy to the many million that remain without access. And they are a natural fit for many developing economies. The International Energy Agency says that 80% of energy consumption growth over the next decade occurs in regions with high-quality solar resources. And it's not only about solar. There are huge opportunities in Africa and beyond for other technologies, for wind, for geothermal, for hydropower, for new low-emission fuels, and of course for the investments in grids, storage, and other infrastructure that tie the energy system together. So this can be the growth story of the 21st century. And therefore, I would like to assure you of two things. First, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to lead by example. We are firmly on track to meet our own 2030 target. We have an ambitious NDC for 2035, and we have the goal to be climate neutral by 2050, so Europe is staying the course. Second, I want to assure you of Europe's commitment to partner with developing economies, to mobilize investments in clean energy around the world. And here, let me give you 4 figures that are telling. Of the 2 trillion invested globally in clean energy last year, only 2% was in Africa, while Africa has 600 million people who have no access to electricity, and it is the continent with 60% of the world's best solar potential. So this cannot be. We must change this imbalance. And that is at the core of Europe's Global Gateway Initiative. These are 150 billion euros investment program for Africa, of which 25% goes into grids and into interconnectors. And that is also why, together with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, my friend, we launched the campaign called Scaling Up Renewables for Africa. Yesterday, we had a big pledging event. We're working with governments and the private sector, and thank you to many, many of you around the table who contributed to the pledging event. We reached 15.5 billion euros pledges for investment in renewables in Africa. A big success, and many thanks again for that. Thank you.
Thank you for passing on that message, Ursula. I now would like to call upon His Excellency President Emmanuel Macron, the President of the French Republic.
So it's only me, Mr. President. I'm the Finance Minister. I'm going to give the introduction in the name of President Macron, who just is at a meeting now. Thank you. Je remercie l'Afrique du Sud d'avoir mis à l'agenda la question de la résilience de ce monde que nous avons en commun. Nous avons ce matin parlé de nos économies, mais nous ne devons pas oublier nos biens communs. Les défis et les dangers qui menacent notre planète ne peuvent être traités que collectivement, ensemble. Les effets du changement climatique, la dégradation de l'environnement, les pollutions, la perte de biodiversité, la multiplication des catastrophes climatiques et l'impact de ces facteurs sur les systèmes alimentaires sont interconnectés, avec des conséquences claires sur nos économies et nos sociétés, quand le développement et la croissance sont des facteurs de paix. Nous avons tous à perdre à choisir l'affrontement ou le repli sur soi plutôt que la coopération. Refuser de s'attaquer au changement climatique, de bâtir un monde capable de résister aux catastrophes naturelles, de travailler à des systèmes alimentaires performants ou de coopérer en matière de santé, c'est nous fragiliser collectivement. Je me félicite donc de l'adoption par nos ministres de principes de haut niveau sur le financement de la réduction des risques de catastrophes qui soulignent notre volonté commune d'agir plus tôt et de reconstruire de manière plus durable. À l'image des catastrophes naturelles de plus en plus nombreuses à cause du changement climatique, les pandémies ne connaissent pas de frontières. Je me réjouis donc de l'accord mondial sur la prévention, la préparation et la riposte face aux pandémies. Cette adoption représente une victoire claire pour le multilatéralisme. C'est une avancée majeure pour notre sécurité sanitaire qui consacre pour la première fois dans le droit international l'approche une seule santé, One Health. Cette approche, elle doit être notre boussole pour promouvoir l'inclusion systématique des enjeux de santé animale et de santé de nos écosystèmes pour élaborer des politiques publiques vertueuses. L'engagement de la France se traduit par le One Health Summit que nous accueillerons à Lyon le 7 avril prochain. Ce sommet doit parvenir à des engagements ambitieux, des solutions innovantes et des initiatives concrètes pour répondre de façon durable aux problèmes prioritaires touchant la santé quotidienne de nos populations. La santé ne peut en effet plus se penser sans la sécurité alimentaire, ni une alimentation saine, car l'obésité est en train de devenir une pandémie. Rien n'est possible sans accès à l'alimentation, ni l'éducation, essentielle pour une croissance économique durable, ni la paix, ni même le progrès démocratique. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous restons pleinement engagés, à l'instar de notre coprésidence de la Coalition pour l'alimentation scolaire du Programme alimentaire mondial et de l'accueil du sommet Nutrition for Growth, qui a confirmé la forte mobilisation politique sur ces enjeux avec des engagements financiers à hauteur de 30 milliards de dollars. Et c'est pour ça également que cette question sera au cœur du sommet Africa Forward, organisé par notre partenaire kényan en mai 2026 à Nairobi. Cher Président Ramaphosa, chers collègues, la France continuera à porter ce multilatéralisme fondé sur la science de Johannesburg à Lyon, en passant par Nairobi, pour qu'ensemble nous puissions faire face aux nombreux défis environnementaux et sanitaires à venir. Merci.
Thank you. I now want to give the opportunity to His Excellency Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany.
Thanks, you, Chair. Unfortunately, the Chancellor's in a meeting, and also the Finance Minister of Germany is speaking. And thank you, President Ramaphosa, first of all, for putting resilience on the top of our agenda. 2025 has tested our resilience and global stability. There is war and conflict, and communities have been tested by the increasing impact of climate change. Wildfires and floods destroying homes in many of our countries. And heat waves threaten our health, food and water supplies, and energy security. It's a heavy burden both for our economies and societies, and even more in so fragile regions and the most vulnerable countries. This is why we need to act. Our actions need to make our world more resilient by unlocking growth and protecting the climate at the same time. We should create the right conditions to create more business cases for action. Protecting the climate and creating business opportunities can and must go hand in hand. To make this happen, we need to use all technologies available. And we need to give space for new technologies to emerge. With the right market framework, new technologies can become the most attractive option for providers and for consumers. Energy transition works best when businesses and end users benefit. For example, in the first half of this year, more than a third of global electricity was produced by renewables. Germany supports the transition towards secure, affordable, and clean energy at home and abroad. In this regard, I want to highlight our Just Energy Transition partnership with South Africa. In this partnership, we exchange skills and technology. Over the last years, South Africa has emerged as a global leader in clean hydrogen, leveraging its huge energy potential and mineral resources. This can benefit countries that are energy importers, and it helps build overall resilience. We are happy to further continue on this energy trajectory with other African countries. Germany is also supporting the initiatives Scaling Up Renewables in Africa, launched by the EU and South Africa with more than 2 billion euros. Beyond creating the right framework, our cooperation is the key sector, with the private sector is key. This is the second lever. If we want to increase our resilience, we need to mobilize the flow of private capital. There are still too many structural barriers politically and economically. This discourages private investments globally, but in particular in Africa. This is why Chancellor Friedrich Merz and also President Ramaphosa just kicked off the initiative's Compact with Africa 2.0. By pushing reforms, members of the Compact help their businesses to attract private investment in the energy sector, but also beyond. And with G20 partners, we launched the scaled initiatives last year. We are working together with leading insurance companies on blended finance to allow the private sector to invest in an easier and more efficient way. we should take these kinds of initiatives forward. Let us work together to leverage innovation and investment for a resilient world, just as we set out when we founded the G20 back in 2008. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We welcome that. I now want to call Her Excellency Ms. Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, we all know no one can tackle alone global challenges as climate change and the vulnerability of food systems. As members of the G20, we have a shared responsibility to find a way forward that, but we also know that way forward must be based on common sense. In my opinion, we must abandon once and for all the ideological dogmatism that is causing more harm than good. In Europe, for example, choices have been made in the past that have brought entire productive sector to their knees without producing any real benefit in terms of global emissions. And in Africa, dogmatic approaches imposed by foreign partners that do not take into account the specificities of African nations paradoxically risk reinforcing all patterns of dependency. This is a losing strategy. So a pragmatic balance must be found between the need to limit emissions and the risk of compromising the most advanced productive systems and preventing the weaker ones from establishing themselves. In our opinion, the challenge is to affirm the principle of technological neutrality, because there is no single solution capable of quickly building a solid alternative to fossil fuel supplies, but also because this spurs research, innovation, and virtuous competition. The energy mix must be balanced and must combine all available technologies: renewable gas, hydrogen, biofuels, CO2 capture systems, as well as research into nuclear fusion, which would change history by producing clean, safe, and unlimited energy. This is the approach that inspires Italy and to which we contribute with industrial expertise, technological capability, financial instruments, and cooperation with other nations. For example, we've launched investments in Africa worth a total of almost 2.5 billion euros, financing projects ranging from the construction of large renewable energy plants to innovative solutions for production and storage. And also on food systems, Italy continues to do its part. We co-organized the last United Nations Summit on food systems with Ethiopia. We are making our agri-food know-how available to our African partners, and we are building public-private partnerships with them that guarantee concrete results. We are successfully working on this, for example, in Algeria, where we are working together to reclaim over 36,000 hectares of desert to produce up to 45,000 tons more cereals and legumes per year, generating benefits for over 600,000 people. And we are now replying this experiment in Senegal, Ghana, and Congo, and aim to involve other nations on the continent. But I want to be clear while closing my remarks. Our goal is not to create dependency. Our goal is to support self-sufficiency, because we believe in dignity of people, we believe in the freedom of nations, and we believe in the strength of genuine partnerships. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, my sister, Giorgia Meloni. I now ask His Excellency, President of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Lee Jae-myung, to take the floor. Okay, I'm sure he's in a bilateral somewhere. I then ask His Excellency the President of the Republic of Turkey, His Excellency Recep Tayyip Erdogan, to take the floor. There are lots of bilaterals taking place at this time, and now I move on to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, His Excellency Narendra Modi. Excellency Erdogan is there. My apologies. We'll get...
Saygıdeğer devlet ve hükümet başkanları, kıymetli delegeler, sabahki oturumumuzda ifade olunduğu üzere doğal salgınlar, iklim değişikliği ve afetler gibi yeni sınamalarla karşı karşıya kalıyoruz. 6 Şubat 2023'te yaşadığımız ve asrın felaketi olarak isimlendirdiğimiz yıkıcı depremlerin ardından dünyanın en büyük inşa operasyonunu yürütüyoruz. Bu çerçevede 350.000. konut ve iş yerinin teslimini geçtiğimiz günlerde gerçekleştirdik. Geriye kalan 100.000 ünitenin tamamlanmasıyla 4 yıldan kısa bir süre içinde dünyanın en büyük inşa faaliyetlerinden birini tamamlamış olacağız. Bu süreçte sergilediğimiz dayanıklılık, Türkiye ekonomisinin nedenli sağlam temellere sahip olduğunu bir kez daha ortaya koymuştur. Diğer yandan iklim krizinin menfi etkilerinin en yoğun hissedildiği ülkeler arasındayız. 2025 yılında karşı karşıya kaldığımız zirai don ve ardından şiddetli kuraklık hem gıda fiyatlarında hem de enerji arzında büyük baskılar doğurdu. Yaşadığımız her acı tecrübe iklim değişikliğiyle mücadeleye, sürdürülebilir kalkınmaya, gıda, su güvenliğini güçlendirmeye önem vermemiz gerektiğini gösteriyor. Geçtiğimiz aylarda kabul edilen iklim kanunumuz 2053 yılında net sıfır emisyona ulaşma ve yeşil kalkınma hedefimizi gerçekleştirme noktasında önemli bir dönüm noktasını teşkil ediyor. Kanun kapsamında ayrıca temiz teknoloji yatırımlarının artırılması ve tüm sektörler için adil dönüşümün finansman olarak desteklenmesini amaçlıyoruz. 2035 yılına kadar güneş ve rüzgar enerjisi kapasitemizi mevcudun 4 katına çıkarmayı öngörüyoruz. Şimdiden bu yıl itibariyle toplam kurulu güç içerisinde yenilenebilir enerjinin payını %60'ın üzerine çıkarmış durumdayız. Ayrıca Birleşmiş Milletler'in desteğiyle küresel bir çevre hareketine dönen sıfır atık projesiyle birlikte çevresel konularda çalışmalarımızı güçlendiriyoruz. Bu düşüncelerle Birleşmiş Milletler İklim Değişikliği Çerçeve Sözleşmesi 31. Taraflar Konferansı'nı önümüzdeki sene Kasım ayında Türkiye'de düzenlemeyi planlıyoruz. Son dönemde çok taraflılığın kaybettiği zemin dikkate alındığında bu hususta Avustralya ile sağladığımız mutabakatı çok daha anlamlı buluyorum. Ayrıca Güney Afrika Dönem Başkanlığı'nın gıda güvenliği konusundaki çalışmalarını takdirle karşılıyoruz. G20 olarak gıda güvenliğini tesis etme noktasındaki çabalarımızı önümüzdeki dönemde artırmamızın çok isabetli olacağına gönülden inanıyorum. Tabii tüm bu gayretlerin ekonomik maliyeti çok yüksektir. Bilhassa gelişmekte olan ülkelerin ihtiyaçlarına cevap verecek bir finansman sisteminin hayata geçirilmesi gerektiğine inanıyorum. Değerli dostlarım, Amerikan Başkanı Sayın Trump'ın girişimleri ve önde gelen bölge ülkelerinin katkılarıyla Gazze'de sağlanan ateşkesin devamı sadece Filistin halkı için değil, tüm dünyanın huzuru için azami önemdedir. Birleşmiş Milletler verilerine göre İsrail'in Gazze'de yol açtığı yıkım, Filistin'in kalkınma çabalarını asgari 70 yıl geriye götürmüştür. Gazze'de maalesef sadece üst yapının değil, çevrenin de yıkımına şahit olduk. 70 bini aşkın çocuk, kadın ve masum yetişkinin kaybının ise ne telafisi ne de gelecek nesillerin dimağında açtığı yaranın silinmesi mümkündür. Gelinen aşamada Gazze'de hem insani yardım faaliyetlerinin hızlandırılması hem de yeniden inşa faaliyetlerine gecikmeksizin başlanması esas olmalıdır. Birleşmiş Milletler kuruluşlarının Gazze'de insani yardımların koordinasyonundaki rolünü vazgeçilmez görüyoruz. Öte yandan kış şartlarıyla birlikte bilhassa barınma sorununun giderilmesinde zemin aleyhimize işliyor. Biz sahadaki ateşkesin sürmesine ve Gazze'nin yeniden inşasına katkı sunmaya şimdiye kadar olduğu üzere Filistin halkının yanında durmaya kararlıyız, hazırız. Kalıcı barışın yegane yolu olan iki devletli çözüm için uluslararası toplum olarak çabalarımızı sürdürmemiz gerektiğini bir kez daha vurguluyor. Bu düşüncelerle sizleri saygıyla selamlıyorum. Thank you.
Thank you, President Erdogan. My apologies for ignoring you the first time. Now I ask the Prime Minister of the Republic of India, His Excellency Mr. Narendra Modi.
Excellencies, नेचुरल डिजास्टर्स मानवता के लिए बहुत बड़ी चुनौती बने हुए हैं। इस वर्ष भी प्राकृतिक आपदाओं ने दुनिया की बहुत बड़ी आबादी को प्रभावित किया है। इससे स्पष्ट है कि प्राकृतिक आपदाओं से निपटने के लिए ग्लोबल कोऑपरेशन को हमें और मजबूत करना होगा। इसी सोच के साथ भारत ने अपनी G20 प्रेसिडेंसी के दौरान डिजास्टर रिस्क रिडक्शन वर्किंग ग्रुप की स्थापना की थी। इस महत्वपूर्ण एजेंडा को प्राथमिकता के साथ आगे बढ़ाने के लिए मैं साउथ अफ्रीका को बधाई देता हूं। फ्रेंड, डिजास्टर रेजिलियंस को लेकर हमारी अप्रोच रिस्पॉन्स सेंट्रिक से भी आगे डेवलपमेंट सेंट्रिक होनी चाहिए। कोalition फॉर डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की स्थापना के पीछे भारत की यही सोच थी। G20 देश CDRI के साथ मिलकर फाइनेंस, टेक्नोलॉजी और स्किल डेवलपमेंट को मोबिलाइज कर सकते हैं। ये एक रेजिलिएंट फ्यूचर की गारंटी बन सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, भारत का ये भी मानना है कि स्पेस टेक्नोलॉजी से पूरी मानवता को लाभ हो। इसलिए भारत G20 ओपन सैटेलाइट डेटा पार्टनरशिप का सुझाव सामने रख रहा है। इससे G20 देशों के स्पेस एजेंसियों का सैटेलाइट डेटा और एनालिसिस ग्लोबल साउथ के देशों के लिए अधिक सुलभ, इंटरऑपरेबल और उपयोगी बनाया जा सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, ग्लोबल ग्रोथ के लिए सस्टेनेबिलिटी और क्लीन एनर्जी जरूरी है। ये सुनिश्चित करने के लिए क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स का बहुत बड़ा रोल है। ये मानवता की साझी संपदा है। इसलिए भारत G20 क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स सर्कुलेटरी इनिशिएटिव का प्रस्ताव रखता है। इसके तहत रिसाइकलिंग, अर्बन माइनिंग और सेकेंड लाइफ बैटरी जैसे इनोवेशन को बढ़ावा दिया जा सकता है। सर्कुलेटरी में इन्वेस्टमेंट होगी तो प्राइमरी माइनिंग पर निर्भरता कम रहेगी। इससे सप्लाई चेन पर भी दबाव कम होगा और नेचर के लिए भी ये अच्छा रहेगा। ये इनिशिएटिव ज्वाइंट रिसर्च टेक्नोलॉजी स्टैंडर्ड्स और ग्लोबल साउथ के पायलट रिसाइकलिंग फैसिलिटीज को सपोर्ट कर सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, नई दिल्ली G20 समिट के दौरान हमने संकल्प लिया था कि 2030 तक रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी को 3 गुना और एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी रेट को 2 गुना करेंगे। इस लक्ष्य को हासिल करने के लिए विकसित देशों को अफोर्डेबल क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस और टेक्नोलॉजी उपलब्ध कराने के लिए अपने कमिटमेंट्स को टाइम बाउंड तरीके से पूरा करना होगा। फ्रेंड्स, क्लाइमेट चेंज और अन्य चुनौतियों के कारण हमारे एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर और फूड सिक्योरिटी पर खतरा और गंभीर होता जा रहा है। कई देशों में किसानों के लिए फर्टिलाइजर्स, टेक्नोलॉजी, क्रेडिट, इंश्योरेंस और मार्केट एक्सेस की चुनौती बढ़ती जा रही है। भारत अपने स्तर पर इन चुनौतियों से निपटने का प्रयास कर रहा है। भारत में हम विश्व का सबसे बड़ा फूड सिक्योरिटी और न्यूट्रिशन सपोर्ट प्रोग्राम चला रहे हैं। विश्व का सबसे बड़ा हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस प्रोग्राम और सबसे बड़ी फसल बीमा योजना भी भारत चला रहा है। हम श्री अन्न यानी मिलेट्स पर बल दे रहे हैं, जो पोषण और पर्यावरण दोनों के लिए सुपर फूड है। दिल्ली G20 के दौरान इन सभी विषयों पर हमने डेकन प्रिंसिपल्स पर सहमति बनाई थी। अब हमें इन प्रिंसिपल्स पर आगे बढ़ते हुए एक G20 रोड मैप बनाना चाहिए। फ्रेंड्स, रेजिलियंस कैन नॉट बिल्ड इन साइलोस। G20 को ऐसी कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजी को बढ़ावा देना चाहिए जो न्यूट्रिशन, पब्लिक हेल्थ, सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर और डिजास्टर प्रिपेयर्डनेस को जोड़कर एक मजबूत वैश्विक सुरक्षा बनाए। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you. I now ask Mr. Masanao Ozaki from the Republic of Japan to speak on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Chairman. 日本は課題先進国としての知見や経験を生かし、これまで災害、感染症、気候変動といった地球規模課題の解決に向け、各国の要望に基づいた取り組みを有言実行で実施してまいりました。第一に防災について、世界各地では自然災害が激甚化頻発化しており、持続的で強靭な社会の構築には災害対策が待ったなしであります。災害リスクの理解、防災投資、対応、とりわけ災害リスク削減のためのインフラ強靭化が重要であります。自然災害の多い日本は、世界一の防災大国を目指しています。日本はその知恵と技術を共有し、仙台防災枠組みの実施など、国際協力を主導してきました。アフリカやアジアでは、テクノロジーも活用し、干ばつ対策、サイクロンシェルター整備、気象予報にかかる能力構築支援といったハード・ソフト両面の協力を行っています。また、自然災害は被災国、特に低所得国や島諸国の財政にも悪影響を及ぼし、迅速な復旧を妨げるため、日本は各地の災害リスクファイナンスの整備支援も主導しています。第2に、気候変動について、世界の気温上昇を工業化以前から 1.5 度以内に抑えるには、先進国のみならず、主要排出国をはじめ、国際社会が団結して取り組むことが必要であります。日本は引き続き、国内外の気候変動対策に取り組んでいきます。第3に、海洋の環境問題について、日本は G20 大阪サミットで、大阪ブルーオーシャンビジョンを提唱し、各国のプラスチック汚染対策を支援しています。プラスチック条約について、日本は多くの国が参加する実効的な条約の早期策定に向け、関係国の橋渡しを行っていきます。第4に、国際保健について、ワクチン支援を含む新型コロナ対応は、G20 との効果的な協力の代表例であります。国際保健は、国際社会全体の経済、社会、 安全保障上の重要な課題であり、日本はユニバーサルヘルスカバレッジの達成に向け、来月には UHC ハイレベルフォーラムを東京で開催し、世界銀行、WHO のナレッジハブでの人材育成を含め、国際保健を力強く推進します。第5に、エネルギー移行について、安価で安定的なエネルギー供給やエネルギー安全保障の確保は極めて重要です。日本はアジアゼロエミッション共同体、AZEC など、脱炭素化、経済成長、エネルギー安全保障を同時に実現し、多様な道筋の下でネットゼロを目指す取り組みを力強く推進していきます。最後に食料安全保障について、強靭で持続可能な農業・食料システムを構築するために、日本は各地域の実情に応じた生産力の強化に向けた支援を行ってまいります。日本は引き続き、各国と知見と経験を共有し、相手国の主体性を尊重した実用的な支援を行ってまいります。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you. I'd now like to call His Excellency Mr. Gibrian Raka Buming Raka, the Vice President of Indonesia.
Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, Excellencies, leaders of G20 countries, in many parts of the world, crises are intensifying. Global solidarity and decisive leadership are needed to address them. Indonesia commends South Africa's leadership in advancing energy, water, and food security. For Indonesia, food security is not just an economic agenda, but a fundamental necessity for our people. For that reason, the President of Indonesia is focusing on the food security and free nutritious meals for 80 million students and pregnant women as strategic investment. That promotes the use of local products, empowering farmers and livestock breeders, while expanding economic activity in many areas. On the other hand, as an island nation located in the Pacific Ring of Fire, Indonesia faces more than 3,000 disasters every year, from earthquakes, floods, to volcanic eruption. For Indonesia, resilience is not a slogan, it is a daily reality. Drawing from these experiences, Indonesia promotes the concept of sustainable resilience, a framework in which human development, economic growth, and environmental protection can advance in harmony. Excellencies, today's disasters are not only natural, many are the results of human action. We see this in Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan, and the Sahel, and many other regions, where conflicts reduce homes to rubble, deprive people of hopes and livelihood. These tragedies remind us to put humanity at the heart of global governance. The world must not allow and normalize preventable human suffering from becoming the new normal. As a forum representing 85% of the world's GDP, the G20 carries a moral duty to lead by example, ensuring that growth and resilience become two sides of the same coin, driving hope, prosperity, and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now want to call the President of the Republic of Korea, Mr. Lee Jae-myung.
네, 의장님 감사합니다. 근본 세션의 주제는 각각 다른 주제 같지만 상호 연결된 하나의 체계적 위험 요인입니다. 유엔 재해위험 경감국이 지적하는 것처럼 여러 분야에서 연쇄적으로 나타나는 복합 위기입니다. 그러나 우리가 충격을 적절히 흡수하고 복원력을 강화하면 새로운 기회가 창출되고 또 새로운 성장 기반이 마련될 것입니다. 이를 위해서 먼저 국제사회는 기후위기 대응 노력을 지속해서 강화해야 합니다. 대한민국은 국제사회의 노력에 동참하기 위해서 2035년 온실가스 감축 목표와 중장기 기후 탄력적 발전 경로를 확정했습니다. 우리 정부는 기후변화 대응을 위한 국제사회의 여정에 책임 있는 일원으로서 함께 할 것입니다. 둘째로, 재난위험 대응은 예방 중심, 복원력 중심으로 재편되어야 합니다. 올해 G20 재난위험 경감 강요회의가 다중재난 조기 경보 체계를 도입한 것은 매우 적절합니다. 대한민국 역시 누구나 소외되지 않고 재난 위협으로부터 안전한 미래를 만들기 위해서 노력하고 있고, 아시아 태평양 국가들에게 홍수 조기 경보 체계 구축 등 재난 위험 저감 사업을 지원하고 있습니다. 대한민국은 G20 회원국 여러분과 함께 재난 대응 복원력 강화를 위한 노력에 적극 동참할 것입니다. 셋째, 에너지 전환 과정에서 복원력 높은 인프라 시스템에 적극 투자해야 합니다. 대한민국은 기후위기 대응과 녹색 산업 성장을 위해서 재생에너지를 기반으로 에너지 고속도로를 추진 중입니다. 해상풍력 클러스터와 분산형 전력망 구축을 확대하고 국민 모두에게 혜택을 주는 햇빛소득, 바람소득 공유 모델도 확산시켜 나가고 있습니다. 마지막으로 글로벌 식량 체제 복원력 강화를 위해서 국제사회가 연대와 협력을 지속해야 합니다. 한국은 유엔 세계 식량 계획과 식량 원조 사업을 17개국으로 확대하고 아프리카 14개국의 K 라이스벨트 사업을 추진해 왔습니다. 앞으로도 국제사회의 연대와 협력 강화에 앞장설 것입니다. 존경하는 동료 여러분, 아프리카 속담처럼 비는 한 지붕에만 내리지는 않습니다. G20는 2008년 금융위기, 2020년 팬데믹 위기에 세계 경제 회복을 이끌어냈습니다. 기후, 재난, 에너지, 식량의 복합 위기 또한 그때와 같은 책임감 있는 연대를 필요로 합니다. 한 국가의 회복력은 전 세계의 회복력으로 이어집니다. 위험을 사전에 낮추고 충격에 흔들리지 않으며 더 나은 상태로 회복할 수 있는 글로벌 체계를 함께 구축하는 데 대한민국이 앞장서서 기여하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you. Thank you. I now call upon His Excellency the Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian Federation, Mr. Maxim Oreshkin.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa. I will start with reminding a personal story of Bill Gates, the renowned Microsoft co-founder. He was an early and outspoken advocate for the urgency of climate change, investing billions in clean energy solutions. Recently, he softened his stance, emphasizing human welfare and balanced policy over alarmist views, where funding for health and development plays the leading role. It happens sometimes that the positions of key figures can change, and the country policy also can change amid evolving conditions and priorities. However, tactics should not dominate the strategy. We stand for long-term and balanced development, aiming at sustainable progress that benefits all equitably. Global climate policy should be reasonable, not dogmatized. It should be focused on ensuring access to technologies and finance. It should also be cost-effective. Energy transitions should be both clean and affordable. Zero and low-emission technologies, including natural gas, nuclear, and hydropower, play a pivotal role in energy transitions, especially here in Africa, where 500 million of people do not have access to electricity.
Technologically neutral approach is needed to advance decarbonization without compromising economic growth and SDG 7, access to energy for all. CO2 removal solutions, natural sinks, are not less effective than mitigation, while most affordable and also scalable. Energy policies must ensure energy security and be aligned with structural shifts in global energy demand. The expansion of digital economy, including AI, blockchain, big data, is driving electricity demand comparable to heavy industry. We need to develop new generation capacities located near resource bases and consumers. Food systems, energy, climate change, and disaster resilience are integral parts of one global resilience platform. Global South and Global East play a crucial role in providing food and energy to the world due to their vast agricultural resources and abundant natural reserves, thus contributing to food and energy security. What is also needed for global food security is fair competition and open trade. Well-functioning markets are a key factor to eliminate hunger worldwide. Just to mention that despite illegitimate sanctions, Russia is among the world's major exporters of food and fertilizers, and about 97% of our supplies go to developing nations, of which more than 40% go to low-income countries. Even amidst the background of sanctions that indirectly affect even food supplies, Russia fulfills its mission of contributing to global food security. As for the G20's mission, it is not only to respond to shocks, but to design a future architecture that is balanced and shock resilient. So, global resilience today must go beyond crisis response. It also has to be platform-based. Climate change, disaster risk reduction, and energy transitions are intertwined and should be addressed collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you indeed. I now wish to call upon Minister of Foreign Affairs of Argentina, Pablo Quirno Magrain.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for placing these critical issues not only for the stability of our economies, but also for the well-being of our populations, particularly the most vulnerable. During periods of catastrophes and crisis, the solidarity of nations is most evident. History has shown that despite diverse worldviews, the G20 has served as a platform for cooperation in the most challenging moments of recent history, successfully reaching consensus and coordinating actions and tasks collectively. Disaster prevention cannot be limited to statements. It requires concrete action and effective collaboration with the most vulnerable nations. It is essential to provide technology, materials, expertise, and skilled personnel to develop safe infrastructure and mitigate damage. An efficient approach is to share resources when and where they are needed, coordinating among countries in a practical, bureaucracy-free manner. Disasters tend to occur in predictable seasons and regions. Therefore, international agreements must move from words to clear commitments with specified contributions and shared responsibility, ensuring that solidarity goes beyond good intentions. Allow me to move on to my next point. Food security must be addressed through mechanisms that do not reduce global food production and investment. Argentina is a major food producer, and under market conditions, free from distortions caused by domestic and international policies, it could double and diversify its production. Many countries have implemented domestic policies aimed at lowering consumer prices, which have led to stagnation or declines in production. This effect is not only caused by domestic public policies, but also by international ones. Food markets are competitive, meaning there is a good balance between quality and price. Distorting them through subsidies or prohibitions only harms those who need food the most, because higher production would correspond to lower prices. For this reason, Argentina fights against market distortions, against barriers to food trade, and against subsidies that distort competition. That is why we promote long-term contracts to supply countries that regularly import food, as well as strategic partnerships that ensure food security. Hunger is addressed by increasing food production, not by reducing it through measures that only stagnate it.
We're here to cooperate by producing, integrating stable value chains, and selling at highly competitive prices and quality for the benefit of consumers around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. My last speaker on the G20 member side is Her Excellency, Minister of Finance and Public Credit, United Mexican States, Edgar Amador Zamora.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We gather today not only as representatives of our nations, but as partners in the pursuit of a resilient and sustainable world. As we reflect on the challenges that we have faced, be it the global pandemic, extreme weather events linked to climate change, or market financial volatility, we must recognize the pivotal role that the G20 plays in fostering collaboration and resilience among our nations. Together, we have the power to shape a future that prioritizes the well-being of our people and our planet. Investing in disaster risk reduction protects development gains, reduces vulnerabilities, strengthens adaptation to climate change, and promotes economic and social stability. Disaster risk reduction is at the heart of development, advancing the 2030 agenda and safeguarding its achievements. Mexico welcomes South Africa's leadership and vision in this area so that the G20 can contribute significantly to positioning resilience as a global public good and as an indispensable condition for sustainable development. The G20 provides a forum for dialogue that highlights the importance of integrating disaster risk reduction into development planning, public investment, and international cooperation. Discussion within the group reflects a growing consensus. There will be no sustainable development or effective adaptation to climate change without proper management of present and future risks. Mexico particularly values the G20's promotion of common approaches on issues such as early warning systems, resilient infrastructure, and resilient financing. Those efforts contribute to strengthening the global coherence that must be fostered among the development, climate, and risk agendas. Following the recent COP30 in Belém do Pará, Brazil, the G20 had the opportunity to reaffirm its collective commitment at the highest political level to the goals of the Paris Agreement and to strengthen a more ambitious and equitable global response to the climate crisis. The G20 must send a message of unity and ambition, reaffirming the group's leadership in achieving a fair and sustainable global transition that leaves no one behind. Mexico has consistently played an active and constructive role in international climate negotiations, working to build bridges, promote consensus, and uphold key principles such as equity, intergenerational justice, and the centrality of human rights in climate action. The just energy transition is not merely a goal, it is a moral imperative that requires our collective commitment and action. The Mexican people have faced prolonged droughts, intensified hurricanes, disrupted rains, and biodiversity losses. Through our updated nationally determined contribution, Mexico will strengthen its renewable energy and sustainable transport goal, expand nature-based solutions such as the restoration of forests, mangroves, and coastal systems, prioritize community-centered adaptation, and include security as an across-the-board issue linked to climate action. We believe that a just energy transition should encompass the following 4 key principles: inclusion, job creation and skills development, investment in clean technologies, and support for communities. To advance towards sustainable and resilient food system, Mexico has implemented technical support actions through farmer field schools to increase production with an agroecological approach. We also established new seed banks dedicated to the preservation of traditional food systems, which contributed to the selection, conservation, and safeguarding of native corn varieties. Finally, the efficient use of water in food production is a strategic issue. Therefore, we implemented the National Irrigation Technology Program, which includes training and technological assistance to producers to recover volumes for other uses. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you indeed. We've now concluded the interventions by G20 members. We now have guest countries that have chosen to make interventions. As we have run out of time, we propose that we allow interventions right up till 6:45. And beyond 6:45, those who have not spoken will then be given the opportunity into the third session tomorrow. We anticipate that we should be able to finish in time tomorrow. So if by 6:45 we have not given you the opportunity to speak, there will be ample opportunity for you to make your intervention tomorrow. We say this as we have some 500 guests who are coming in for the dinner, which we are all invited to, and we should not keep them waiting too long. But besides, we've been at this since 10 o'clock this morning, if not earlier, and I am told that it's always best to get time to rest and to have something to eat. This I get from my wife, who is a doctor, and I am a doctor by marriage. So this is the advice that I have received through my marriage. So I now want to call upon Dr. Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah, and the guest country speakers have 3 minutes each.
Thank you. To address disaster risk, the African continent has renewed commitment by adopting the Windhoek Declaration on advancing the program of action for the implementation of this DAI framework for disaster risk reduction 2025-2030. As the cost of disaster increase and international assistance decline, more and urgent concrete action are needed in the next 5 years to sustain progress towards achieving the expected outcome of the goals of this reduction. Climate change and food security must be transformative. It also requires partnership built on accessible finance and fair technology transfer. Namibia is undertaking broad measures to transform our food system and reduce our dependence on import. Our focus is to reduce agricultural imports, strengthen domestic production, and build climate-resilient agriculture infrastructure with a strong focus on irrigation, water harvesting, storage, and the rural value chain. We are also modernizing our livestock sector, which remains the backbone of rural livelihood. On climate financing, Namibia will need 15 billion to meet her climate goals, with 90% of adaptation cost relies on international support, hence the need to scale up climate financing. Namibia is creating a formal and attractive framework for investment and technological transfer in renewable energy, including green energy value chain. Our goal is to build a full investable ecosystem while calling for a just transformation to allow development countries to space to develop under the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. We therefore urge the G20 to view Namibia as a vital strategic investment partner ready to work on our shared decarbonization. Finally, Your Excellency, as a country which is higher impact by climate change due to our geographical location, Namibia is bidding to host one of the 2 African regional hubs for the Green Climate Fund, and we will appreciate your support. Thank you, Your Excellencies.
Thank you, President Nandi Ndaitwah. I now want to call upon His Excellency Dr. Julius Maada Bio, the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and Chairperson of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. in his current absence due to, I'm sure, bilaterals, I'd now like to call His Excellency, the Taoiseach of Ireland, Mr. Michael Martin.
Thank you very much indeed, President. And again, thank you and South Africa for bringing the G20's focus onto global resilience. And as has been said by other speakers, disasters are increasing in frequency and volatility, heightened by climate change and conflict, and strong multilateral commitments are needed and are more important than ever. Ireland welcomes the Ministerial Declaration on Disaster Risk Reduction and the overarching approach to identifying, reducing and managing risks before they lead to disasters. On climate, some of us recently returned from COP30 in Brazil, and I was concerned that the spirit of common purpose is weakening. We have made some progress, but we now need to act with unity and with much more urgency. And indeed, the discussions there are proving difficult as we speak to achieve consensus. International climate finance is a priority for Ireland, and we are on track to deliver our COP26 pledge of at least 225 million per year to developing countries by 2025. We will achieve that this year. Our focus is on the poorest and most vulnerable, especially those living in least developed countries and small island developing states, fragile states and communities. Adaptation is perhaps something we haven't given enough attention to. It is central and equally adequate and accessible climate finance is key to countries' adaptation endeavours, and we need to improve that access. In the European Union, as Antonio has said, our sights are on reducing collective emissions by 90% by 2040. In Ireland now, emissions are now lower than at any point since 1990, despite our population growing by 50% over that time period and having successive economic growth as well. On just energy transitions, Ireland is committed to ensure that no one is left behind. We are seeking to, again, as others have said, maximise employment opportunities, support persons and communities who may be negatively affected, and some will, as we action a climate-neutral society by 2050. On food systems, the world is significantly behind on achieving Sustainable Development Goal 2. Transformation must be at the heart of our work to reinvigorate the 2030 agenda. Our collective commitments will be extremely important in the context of growing instability and economic and environmental crises. Ireland focuses on gender equality, climate action and fragility through a range of partners, including the Food and Agriculture Organization, the World Food Programme and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. Women's economic empowerment in the agri-food sector, improving access to finance, expansion of climate-resilient agriculture practices and policy engagement are all critical channels for achieving gender equality. Ireland has provided funding to the African Union for the implementation of the new Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Programme. In Africa and beyond, Ireland remains committed to supporting inclusive, climate-resilient, healthy and nutritious food systems and to contributing to all of these sustainable development goals. These efforts and the efforts of the G20 are integral to building a more resilient world. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. Thank you, Taoiseach Martin. I now ask His Excellency Mr. Sifi Grieb, the Prime Minister of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. شكرا فخامة الرئيس سيريل رامافوسا. اسمحوا لي أن أتلو على مسامعكم كلمة رئيس الجمهورية السيد عبد المجيد تبون التي يوجهها لهذه الجلسة وهذا نصها. تعتبر الجزائر إحدى الدول الأكثر عرضة للآثار السلبية لتغير المناخ، حيث شهدت في الآونة الأخيرة تزايدا غير مسبوق للعديد من الظواهر التي تتسبب في خسائر بشرية ومادية جسيمة، فضلا عن التأثير على النظم البيئية المختلفة. واستجابة لهذا الواقع وضعت بلادي ترسانة قانونية ومؤسساتية للحماية من المخاطر الكبرى وتسيير الكوارث بهدف تدعيم المنشآت التحتية وتعزيز القدرات التقنية والتكنولوجية وإقامة وتحسين أنظمة الإنذار المبكر فضلا عن تعبئة موارد مالية معتبرة للتكفل بالمتضررين. وعلى الصعيد الإقليمي والقاري بادرت الجزائر بإنشاء آلية إفريقية للوقاية من أخطار الكوارث كما تحتضن المركز العربي للوقاية من أخطار الزلازل والكوارث الطبيعية الأخرى في مساهمة منها لتعزيز العمل المشترك في هذا المجال. السيد الرئيس، إن تحقيق الاكتفاء الذاتي وتعزيز الأمن الغذائي يشكلان أولوية للجزائر التي تعرف خلال السنوات الأخيرة نموا استثنائيا للاستثمار الفلاحي خاصة في الجنوب الجزائري عبر شراكات مع دول شقيقة وصديقة. ومن هذا المنطلق ندعو دول المجموعة العشرين إلى عقد شراكات مع الدول الإفريقية لتطوير الإنتاج الفلاحي والحيواني والحد من ظاهرة الجوع والأزمات الغذائية. السيد الرئيس، تواجه القارة الإفريقية تحديات معتبرة بخصوص الانتقال الطاقوي إذ أنها تأوي 18% من سكان العالم بينما تسجل أقل من 6% من الاستهلاك الطاقوي العالمي في حين لا تتجاوز نسبة الربط بالكهرباء 45%. وبالمقابل يفرض علينا التصدي لظاهرة تغير المناخ التخفيف المكثف للانبعاثات وخلق ظروف مواتية لضمان الانتقال السلس إلى أنماط إنتاج واستهلاك خالية من الكربون مع مراعاة المبادئ الآتية: أولا، إرساء آليات تسهيلية تسمح للدول النامية بالاستفادة من الدعم المالي الدولي ونقل التكنولوجيا. ثانيا، تبادل الخبرات الناجحة في تطوير الطاقات المتجددة وترشيد استهلاك الطاقة. تعزيز القدرات البشرية والمؤسساتية للدول النامية. وفي هذا الصدد تدعو الجزائر إلى عقد شراكات في مجال التحول الطاقوي في القارة الإفريقية قصد تجسيد تحول ناجح يسمح بتحقيق أهداف التنمية المتعلقة بالطاقة النظيفة والمتاحة والعمل اللائق والنمو الاقتصادي والعمل من أجل المناخ. وتبدي الجزائر استعدادها لمشاركة تجربتها في مجال الطاقة مع البلدان الإفريقية ودول مجموعة العشرين كما تجدد التزامها بالعمل بشكل حثيث لتجسيد مشاريع طموحة مع شركائها بغية تعزيز الطاقة الخضراء النظيفة والمساهمة في الجهد الجماعي لضمان انتقال طاقوي سلس. وشكرا على حسن الإصغاء.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now call upon Dr. Andrew Michael Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica and the Chair of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM.
Thank you, President. In the first session, I mentioned the recent passage of Hurricane Melissa, one of the most powerful hurricanes recorded in the Atlantic. The true economic impact will take months to fully quantify. However, preliminary estimates already indicate catastrophic losses. Prime Minister Carney pointed out that it is estimated that we have lost, in terms of physical damage, approximately $8.8 billion, or the equivalent of approximately 41%
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Once again, our condolences and our support to the people of Jamaica and the terrible disaster that befell them. And we will forever be holding you in our thoughts and continuing to give support. I now call upon His Excellency Dr. Mustafa Medboli, the Prime Minister of the Arab Republic of Egypt.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa, and let me start by saying that the world is being confronted with multiple critical and interlinked crises that threaten decades of progress towards the SDGs. Today, global challenges ranging from geopolitical tensions, climate change, and food insecurity to water scarcity, soaring debt levels, demand urgent and coordinated multilateral action guided by the principles of solidarity, cooperation, and shared responsibility. The G20 could play a leading role in advancing the response to the above-mentioned crisis. Access to concessional finance, technology transfer, and capacity building are crucial for developing countries to achieve climate action and just transition. The Egyptian presidency of COP27 has exerted all efforts to achieve tangible progress in all areas of climate action, particularly regarding just transition, the role of multilateral development banks in financing climate action, and above all, the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund. We call on the G20 to take a leading role to improve the MDB's role in financing climate action and increasing their support and lending capacities to allow developing countries to have access to concessional finance and other non-debt instruments, and to unlock investment opportunities for a just transition. We also call on the G20 to encourage developed countries to fulfill their climate finance and ODA commitments. Furthermore, the growing global food insecurity remains among the most pressing challenges of our time. Egypt has taken significant steps nationally and internationally to address these critical challenges. In September 25, Egypt, in cooperation with the South African G20 presidency, hosted the third G20 Food Security Task Force meeting in Cairo with the aim to strengthening international cooperation in this field and alleviating food insecurity in developing countries. In conclusion, we believe that the G20 is well positioned to coordinate actionable measures to enhance finance for development, narrow digital divide, and assist developing countries to embrace new technologies, including AI, in order to tackle existing challenges and accelerate the implementation of SDGs by 2030. I thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. I now have the pleasure of asking Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Norway, Mr. Jonas Støre, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Norway has for a long time urged to have resilience on the global agenda, and I'm happy to see that the G20 Summit under your chair, Mr. President, is doing precisely that. Belém, as my Irish colleague said,